we stress that the Geneva Agreement of 1966 is the only valid instrument to settle this territorial dispute, which is deposited in the United Nations. In this major operation against Venezuela, which began with a coup d'etat in 2002 against President Hugo Chavez by the United States, supported by the same actors who today are attempting to overthrow our legitimate government, on the 23rd of January of this year, an unprecedented event took place in Venezuela. A member of Congress who received less than 90,000 votes to Parliament went to a public area and self-proclaimed himself President of Venezuela. This member of Congress is an imperial puppet. He does not exist in Venezuelan politics. He is a criminal element who has been introduced to breach the peace in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. This self-proclamation was followed by recognition by a majority of governments of this unequal world, perhaps one of the worst mistakes in the diplomatic history of these countries. While the minority, unequal world was working out this illegal conspiracy, the legitimate government of President Nicolas Maduro received the support of almost 2/3 of the members of the General Assembly of the United Nations in the non-aligned movement. Exactly 8 months have passed since this unspeakable, twisted stumbling block on our historic path, and the legitimate constitutional government with effective control over the territory and the institutional mechanisms of the rule of law is and will continue to be that of the president which we Venezuelans gave ourselves, Nicolas Maduro, in the framework of the sacred right to self-determination. The majority of the world which supports Venezuela knows that this imperial artifice is also a criminal organization. An even more serious criminal action was the coordination between the imperial puppet, Colombian paramilitary, and the government of Ivan Duque. You can see a photograph of this self-proclaimed president as a head who is standing next to the head of a paramilitary organization, the Rastrojos. This shows you what we're facing. We're facing the use of paramilitary and criminal bands as tools to destabilize Venezuela. History knows enough about this. Our sister Nicaragua knows about this, when the government of the United States used the Contras to overthrow Sandinism. The countries of the Middle East know this too. They have suffered terrorist organizations which were created, armed, and financed to overthrow governments that are not within the orbit of the world hegemonic power. In this vein, I wish to inform the international community that on Wednesday of this week, our ambassador to the International Criminal Court delivered a video which contains a confession, the full confession, of a head of the paramilitary band, the Rastrojos, and this has been given to form part of the inquiry against Colombia because of paramilitary activity. President Maduro called together all sectors of national life to sovereign dialogue to guarantee the peace and calm of the Republic. Our commitment to the Constitution is unshakable. We have brought you this story to warn the world and the international community about these perverse mechanisms, these extra-legal mechanisms, which tomorrow, without any justification, can reach other countries which the world hegemonic power decides to change when it comes to the government and when they decide to actively steal the assets of a country. Venezuela is and will continue to be one and indivisible, the Venezuela of Bolivar and our liberators, which has never surrendered to any empire. The government of the United States has criminally supported this artificial building of a parallel government with the application of a full blockade. In 2014, the United States had imposed 6,000 unilateral coercive measures on dozens of countries throughout the world. Today, in 2019, the number has shot up to 8,000 unilateral coercive measures. These are the preferred weapon of domination in the 21st century. They're less costly and they're more profitable in neo-colonial terms. Today, 32 countries suffer the economic aggression of the United States government. According to the Special Rapporteur of the United Nations on these measures, 1/3 of humanity is suffering the consequences of this collective punishment. The non-aligned movement yesterday approved a declaration firmly rejecting the application of these illegal sanctions. This is the new economic terrorism, using the suffering of the innocent civilian population to reap political benefits for the world hegemonic power, and at the same time illegally obtains billions of dollars with just one tap of a digital button. I've brought two statements which were made last year, and I will quote them. The first of them is a declaration of the Department of State of the United States. The pressure campaign against Venezuela is working. Financial sanctions we imposed have forced the government to start to fall into default, both in sovereign debt and in the national oil country. What we're seeing is a complete economic collapse in Venezuela. So our policy is working, our strategy is working, and we will keep at it. This is a criminal confession in flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations. The second statement comes from former Ambassador William Brownfield. We must deal with this as an agony, a tragedy which will go on until it comes to an end. If there is anything that we can do to speed it up, we must do it. But we must understand that this will have an impact on millions of people who are already having a hard time finding food and medicine. We cannot do this and pretend it will not have an impact. We must take a hard decision. This justifies the ends. And what is the end? To defeat the Bolivarian revolution, to keep its hegemony all over the face of the earth. They attack Iran, Russia, China, the builders of a new world. It is a nefarious policy to apply the illegal, illicit doctrine of regime change. When it comes to these serious allegations, Venezuela calls for investigation of all of the heinous violations of the Charter of the United Nations by the United States. These are crimes against humanity, against Venezuela and the entire world. What are the measures we should take in order to put a stop to the abusive actions of the government of the United States, which also leads to the suffering of its own people? President Trump, your people expect true commitment to democracy and the eradication of poverty and inequality from its leaders. They expect not to be involved in any kind of war. The people of Walt Whitman is more like its poets and not like the arrogant supremacist prose that its government brazenly exhibits. The world expects an immediate course correction from the United States, and that for once and for all they